Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into the dramatic reign of a ruler who didn't just wield ruthless power, but fundamentally reshaped history. We're talking about the enduring patterns of authority and how echoes of ancient power dynamics resonate even now.
Our subject is Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, a figure whose name conjures images of both monumental achievement and, well, chilling brutality.
Right.
His reign saw architectural marvels, ruthless efficiency, and a truly staggering human cost. Sources estimate up to 20 million deaths in just 20 years.
20 million, that's hard to even comprehend.
It really is. To understand this pivotal, yet frankly terrifying figure, we've drawn from a stack of sources. We're looking at ancient historical accounts like Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, and also a wealth of modern research.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to really extract the most important insights from all these sources. It's not just about Qin Shi Huang himself, right?
Exactly. It's about understanding these timeless arches of ruthlessness that seem to emerge as civilizations rise.
Consider this your shortcut, to being well informed about the very nature of power itself. And as we explore his story, you might find yourself connecting this ancient history directly to the world we navigate today.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite striking to imagine his presence, too. The sources describe his statue. It's smaller than figures like Nimrod, the legendary king.
Right. Known for big construction feats.
Yeah, but Qin Shi Huang has these piercing eyes, a short, pointy beard. He's depicted in a black dragon robe, red vestments, and that flat mortarboard hat, the U-E.
Ah, yes, the U with the jade beads.
Exactly, 12 strings of jade beads, U meaning jade, symbolizing upright character. And apparently the beads were meant to prompt him to maintain a straight gaze, make decisions with a clear mind.
Interesting detail.
And his own words, etched on his pedestal, are just as impactful. Imagine reading these. I have collected all the writings of the empire and burnt those which were of no use.
Wow. Straight to the point.
Or, I am emperor, my descendants will be numerous. From the second generation to the 10,000th, my line will not end.
Quite the prediction.
And this one. The reason why China suffers bitterly from endless wars is because of the existence of feudal lords and kings. That gives you a sense of his drive for centralization.
Those quotes absolutely set the tone for his personality and his beliefs. The narrative we're delving into today, it draws heavily from research for the Sapience series, which frames Qin Shi Huang as a prime example of this ruthless rule emerging right alongside the rise of civilization itself.
These aren't just words, they're like a window into the mind of a ruler obsessed with absolute control and an eternal, if ruthless, legacy. So to really understand him and these arches of ruthlessness, we need to go back, way back. What were the most formative early experiences? His rise sounds, well, extraordinary.
His early life was definitely steeped in palace intrigue. Zhao Zheng was born in 209 BCE. His mother was Lady Zhao, a former dancing girl. His father, King Zhuangxiang, or Yuren, as he was known then.
Okay.
Yuren was actually a Qin prince, but he was held as a political hostage in the state of Zhao. His fortunes changed dramatically thanks to Lu Buwei.
Lu Buwei, the merchant and politician.
That's the one. Cunning guy. He saw potential in Yuren. Lu Buwei was also Lady Zhao's lover at the time. He used his influence to get Yuren back to Qin, made him the legitimate heir.
So he kind of engineered the whole thing?
Pretty much. When Yuren's father died, Yuren became King Xuanshang of Qin, and Lady Zhao gave birth to Zhao Zheng.
And after his father's death, Zhao Zheng becomes king at just 13, in 246 BCE. Was he actually in charge?
Not really, no. Not at first. For the next 9 years, Lu Buwei, who was his father's chancellor, basically ran the kingdom for him.
Right.
And during this time, the palace was, let's just say, it was a hotbed of scandalous affairs.
Uh-oh.
The Queen Dowager Zhao, Zhao Zeng's mother, she resumed her illicit relationship with Lu Buwei.
With Lu Buwei, the guy who helped her husband.
Yep. But Lu Buwei got worried about being discovered, so he found this other guy, Lao Ai, apparently known for having a large penis, to occupy her attention.
You're kidding?
Nope. Lu Buwei even bribed an officer to fake Lao Ai's castration so he could serve as her personal eunuch.
Okay, this is getting wild.
It gets wilder. Lao Ai and the Queen Dowager had 2 children together. But Lao Ai grew arrogant, started boasting, and eventually plotted with Lady Zhao to kill young Zhao Zhang so their own kids could rule.
Wow, a plot to kill the young king. That sounds incredibly dramatic, a truly treacherous environment for him. What happened when this plot was, inevitably discovered?
Well, it was discovered.
Yeah.
And the consequences were brutal. Lao Ai was executed, And Zhao Zhang's half-siblings, his mother's children with Laowai, they were put in bags and beaten to death.
Oh my God. Beaten to death in bags.
Yeah, his mother was put under house arrest.
Yeah.
And Lu Bue, stripped of his titles, banished. While he was in exile, he committed suicide by drinking poisoned wine, probably figuring execution was coming anyway.
So by 235 BCE, he's just 24 years old. Zhao Zhang has survived all this, taken control. It's chilling, isn't it? How those early betrayals, that sheer ruthlessness, must have forged his worldview.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder how much personal insecurity, born from that kind of upbringing, fuels the later demands for absolute control.
Yeah.
And that background is absolutely crucial to understanding the emperor he became. By 235 BCE, he was really just getting started.
Okay, so after consolidating power at home, dealing with all that, Zhao Zhang turned his attention outward. He launched this relentless campaign to unify the warring states of China. How did he approach that?
He was methodical
Yeah.
and brutal. He started with the Han Dynasty, which fell in 230 BCE.
Okay.
Then the Northern Zhao Dynasty by 228 BCE. The Yan Dynasty followed in 226, Wei in 225.
Right.
Then the biggest state, Chu, fell in 223 BCE.
So picking them off one by one.
Exactly. Finally, the smallest kingdom, Qi, was conquered in 221 BCE. And his methods in each defeated state were just ruthless, capturing and castrating men, turning both men and women into slaves.
Sheer dominance. So after this incredible string of conquests, what did this unification mean for his own identity? How did he present himself now?
Well, upon completing his final conquest in 221 BCE, he was 32 years old. And Zhao Zhang took this completely unprecedented title, Shi Huangdi.
Shi Huangdi, meaning?
First emperor of all China. This wasn't just a new name. It was a fundamental rebranding, a centralization of power in his very title.
How so?
He combined Huang, which referred to these 8 mythical, sort of godly rulers from the past, with Dai, which referred to 5 great sage king heroes.
Ah, so pulling from legend.
Exactly. By combining them, he was essentially claiming divinity, supreme prestige, proclaiming himself the august ancestor, or the holy ruler, the divine lord. It was a deliberate statement. Ultimate authority rests here.
And his ambition wasn't satisfied even then, was it? I read he continued military expansion south into what we now call Vietnam.
Precisely. His drive for expansion seemed, well, boundless.
Qin Shi Huang wasn't just a conqueror. He was also this architect of immense projects designed to solidify his empire and, his legacy. What were some of these colossal undertakings?
Oh, his construction projects were legendary, both in scale and, unfortunately, in human cost. The Great Wall, for instance.
Right, the start of the Great Wall.
Yeah, initiated in 221 BCE, he was 38. It was mainly to counter incursions from the nomadic Xiongnu tribes up north.
Okay.
Thousands of men were conscripted. Slaves, too, from conquered lands. They were forced to work on this massive defensive structure. Hundreds of thousands died during its construction. It's really the precursor to the much larger Great Wall we think of today.
Just unimaginable suffering. What else?
Then, around 214 BCE, when he was 45, he ordered the construction of the Lingquai Canal.
Lingquai Canal.
Yeah, it's about 22 miles long. It connected the Xiang and Li rivers. Primarily, his purpose was military, transporting soldiers and supplies south to speed up his conquest there.
Makes sense.
But, it actually endures today. It's considered one of China's most beautiful and historical waterways. So a military project with a lasting different kind of legacy.
Huh. But his control wasn't just over land and rivers, was it? It extended to thought itself.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really authoritarian.
Yeah.
In 213 BCE, age 46, Qin Shi Huang banned all philosophies from the 100 schools of thought.
The 100 schools, like Confucianism, Taoism.
All of them. Except for legalism and something called the House of Administrative Method. Those he found useful for advancing his Qin ideology, state control.
So he just shut down philosophical debate.
Pretty much. And then he ordered all classic works and histories burned. He feared they could undermine his legitimacy, challenge his narrative.
Burned the books?
Yep, only books on very practical things like astrology, agriculture, medicine, divination, and of course, the history of Qin itself were spared.
So not just controlling people, but controlling truth itself.
Yeah.
What happened to those who dared to defy him? Particularly the scholars who protested the book burning.
Well, many scholars did protest, and
Oh,
Qin Shi Huang's retaliation was characteristically brutal. He had 460 Confucian intellectuals buried alive,
buried alive, seriously.
or simply killed. Now, we have to acknowledge some historical debate here. Sima Qian's accounts, remember, were written by scholars whose own traditions were targeted, so they likely embellished some details to paint Qin Shi Huang in the worst possible light.
Okay, so maybe some bias in the source.
Possibly. Modern scholarship generally confirms the book destruction and the execution of scholars, but there are nuances, like maybe copies were kept in the imperial libraries, not all copies destroyed, and the specific method of killing, burying alive versus other means is debated.
Right.
But regardless of the exact details, it was a massive, chilling suppression of independent thought. That desire to dictate the narrative erased challenges.
Mm.
It's a chilling echo we see again and again, isn't it?
It really is. For a man who built so much, controlled so much, his greatest obsession seems to have been something he couldn't conquer, death itself.
That's profoundly true. Qin Shi Huang's lifelong obsession with death, it started early. He ordered his own mausoleum built when he was just 13.
At 13, wow.
Yeah. But by age 48, around 210 BCE, his quest for an elixir of life became really urgent. He launched a nationwide search. Archaeologists have actually found 48 bamboo strips from that time recording this decree.
A literal paper trail for the search for immortality.
Exactly. And the deep irony is, he likely consumed cinnabar, which is mercury sulfide, as one of these supposed elixirs.
Mercury. But that's poisonous.
Extremely poisonous is almost tragically ironic, isn't it? The very substance he believed would grant him immortality was likely accelerating his demise.
Huh.
And adding to the ominous signs, a meteor fell in 211 BCE. He was 48. There was an inscription found on it that read, "The first emperor will die, and his land will be divided."
Oof. How did he take that?
Not well. He was outraged, sent officials to investigate, interrogated villagers, demanded to know who wrote it. When no one confessed, he ordered everyone in the village killed and the stone destroyed.
Just wiped out the whole village.
Yep, it really shows his inability to deal with truth or any challenge to his perceived divine authority. He couldn't handle anything that contradicted his narrative of eternal power.
So it's ironic then that his lifelong quest for immortality might have actually been his undoing. Is there solid evidence that this elixir search contributed directly to his death?
Well, the exact cause of death is unknown, but he died at age 49 in 210 BCE while he was on his 5th tour of eastern China. Given his documented consumption of mercury compounds,
Right, the cinnabar.
it's a highly probable contributing factor. His obsession with living forever likely hastened his end.
And even in death, the very control he craved just spiraled into this new chapter of manipulation, didn't it? Ultimately leading to the surprisingly swift collapse of his 10,000-year dynasty.
Absolutely. The deception was elaborate. His prime minister, Li Si, and the chief eunuch, Zhao Gao, they were worried his death could trigger violent revolt if news got out immediately.
So they covered up.
Completely. For 2 months, as the imperial entourage traveled back to the capital, they pretended the emperor was still alive.
How did they manage that?
Kept the carriage shades down. Fake conversations, fake food deliveries. They even arranged for carts of rotten fish to travel with a convoy to mask the smell of the decomposing body.
Oh, that's grim.
It really demonstrates the unchecked power and, frankly, the fear within his inner circle.
So what happened when they got back?
Well, once back, Li Si and Zhao Gao forged a letter, supposedly from Qin Shi Huang. It ordered his eldest son Fu Su, who was the rightful heir, and the respected general Meng Tian to commit suicide.
And they did it.
They did. They believed it was the emperor's final command. But it was a conspiracy. Li Si and Zhao Gao feared Fu Su because he was close to General Meng, and Meng disliked them. They worried Fu Su would appoint Meng to a powerful position.
So they eliminated the heir and his main supporter?
Exactly. And instead, they installed the younger, more pliable son, Ying Huhai, as Qin Shi, the second emperor.
The official story of his death and succession, as you outlined, was just pure deception. How did the truth about what really happened with Hu Hai and his brother Fusu eventually come out? Was it later historians or new discoveries?
It was primarily through later historical accounts like Sima Qian's, which were then corroborated centuries later by archaeological finds like those bamboo strips we mentioned.
Ah, the bamboo strips again.
Yeah, they helped piece together the truth. And the official story was just a complete cover-up.
So Qin Shi takes the throne, but he's basically a puppet.
Completely. He was under the thumb of the eunuch Zhao Gao. Zhao Gao, whose family had a criminal past, but Qin Shi Huang had valued him for his knowledge of criminal law.
Right.
He ruthlessly consolidated his own power. eliminated rivals. He eventually framed and executed the Prime Minister Li Si and his entire family. Zhao Gao then became chancellor himself.
Wow, he just climbed right over everyone.
Pretty much. And this leads us to that infamous calling a deer a horse loyalty test in 207 BCE.
Ah, yes, I've heard of this. Explain it.
So Zhao Gao brings a deer into the court, presents it to the young emperor Qin Shi, but deliberately calls it a horse.
A deer calls it a horse, okay.
The emperor, confused, asks his officials. Some stay silent, terrified. Some agree with Zhao Gao, to curry favor. And a few bravely state the obvious. That's a deer.
What happened to the ones who said it was a deer?
Zhao Gao secretly arranged for all of them to be executed.
Just for telling the truth.
Exactly. It was a brutal lesson in loyalty to him over reality itself. It instilled absolute terror and solidified his power. And this incident, it actually gave rise to the Chinese idiom Zhenglu Wei, Mingyi.
Miglue.
Yeah, it literally means pointing at a deer and calling it a horse. It's used to describe deliberately confusing right and wrong, twisting the truth, blatantly disregarding reality for political gain.
That's a chillingly powerful example of unchecked power and suppressing truth. And didn't that purge lead to even more executions within the royal family?
It did. Reportedly, 12 princes and 10 princesses were executed around that time, as Zhao Gao eliminated any potential rivals or dissenters.
Unbelievable. What was happening in the empire during all this?
It was collapsing. Widespread revolts and rebellions were erupting everywhere. But Qin Shi, the young emperor, he refused to hear bad news. He apparently punished messengers who brought truthful reports of the chaos.
So he was completely out of touch.
Totally manipulated and isolated by Zhao Gao. Eventually, the rebels closed in on the capital. Zhao Gao, seeing the writing on the wall, forced Qin Shi, who was only 22, to commit suicide.
But the treachery didn't end there, did it? Zhao Gao then put someone else on the throne.
He did. He made Fusu's son, seeing so, Qin Shi Huang's grandson, the emperor.
Why him?
Probably thought he could control him too. But Ziying's reign was incredibly brief, like just months. He knew Zhao Gao intended to kill him eventually.
So what did Ziying do?
He turned the tables. On the day of his coronation, Ziying pretended to be ill. When Zhao Gao came to visit him at the palace, Ziying had him ambushed and killed. And then he had Zhao Gao's entire clan exterminated.
Wow. A final act of Qin ruthlessness.
You could say that, but it was too little, too late. That marked the final end of the Qin dynasty, despite Qin Shi Huang's grand pronouncements of lasting 10,000 years.
It lasted how long?
Just 15 years. It fell in 206 BCE.
15 years. Incredible. Even with all the ruthless politics and the dynasty collapsing, maybe Qin Shi Huang's most astonishing legacy is something he built not for his reign, but for his eternal life.
Ah, you mean his mausoleum in the Terracotta Army.
Exactly.
Yeah, construction started way back in 246 BCE when he first became king at 13, but it really ramped up after he unified China in 221 BCE.
The scale is just mind-boggling.
Enormous. Something like 700,000 workers. They reportedly dug through 3 layers of groundwater, poured in bronze for the outer coffin, built entire palaces and towers inside the tomb mound.
And the descriptions from Sima Qian are wild.
They really are. He describes this elaborate symbolic interior, crossbows rigged to shoot intruders automatically.
Right, be traps.
Yep. Rivers of mercury simulating the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Great Sea apparently flowing mechanically, the ceiling painted as the heavens with constellations, the floor as a map of the land.
Wow.
And candles made from manfish, fat. We don't know exactly what that means. Maybe whale oil or something mythical, but designed to burn for a very long time.
So this whole tomb was meant to be his eternal empire underground, the size of Manhattan, apparently, beneath this huge 76-meter mound.
Exactly. And guarding it, of course, is the incredible Terracotta Army.
Discovered by accident, right?
Yeah. Farmers digging a well in 1974 stumbled upon it. These 8,000 life-size soldiers, chariots, horses, all facing east, placed east of the tomb mound itself, like his eternal garrison.
And they're still finding things.
They are. Recent discoveries continue. Like, they found a rare terracotta commander statue, I think late 2024 or early 2025. And other non-military figures too, officials, acrobats, musicians, even bronze carriages.
It's just astonishing. But this raises the big question everyone asks. Why is the central tomb, the actual burial chamber of Qin Shi Huang, still unexcavated?
That's a great question, and there are several really compelling reasons. First, there are significant concerns about preservation.
Like, we might damage things just by opening it?
Exactly. We don't want to lose priceless artifacts or historical information because we lack the perfect technology to preserve them the moment they're exposed to air after millennia. Think about how quickly painted colors faded on some of the warriors when they were first dug up.
Right. Okay. What else?
Well, secondly, there's the potential danger. Remember C. McKean's account?
The booby traps, the crossbows.
Precisely. And also, significantly high levels of mercury have been detected in the soil around the mound.
Mercury, like the rivers Simikin described.
Exactly. It corroborates his account and poses a serious health hazard.
Uh,
And finally, there's just a deep respect for cultural heritage. It's the final resting place of China's first emperor. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. There's a reluctance to disturb it unnecessarily.
Makes sense. But there's a darker side to this legacy too, isn't there? Tied to the tomb's completion.
Yes, C. McKean also recorded that. Concubines who hadn't borne male children were killed and buried with him. Royal horses were killed. And, perhaps most chillingly, all the workers and craftsmen who built the tomb and knew its secrets.
What happened to them?
They were trapped and sealed inside after its completion, to prevent them from ever divulging its secrets or its exact location.
Sealed inside. Just horrifying. And the tomb wasn't even finished when he died.
No, it wasn't fully completed until 208 BCE, 2 years after his death. He would have been 51, though he died at 49.
So we've walked through the life, the reign, the death, the tomb. But what does this all mean for us today? The sources we've looked at, they specifically draw out some pretty striking parallels between Qin Shi Huang and modern figures, illustrating this persistent archetype of ruthless rule.
That's right. And it's important to stress, these parallels are drawn from the source material we reviewed. We're reporting on those comparisons impartially, looking at the archetypal patterns they highlight.
Okay, so what's the first pattern?
Well, take loyalty tests and political purges. Qin's deer horse test. That was pure psychological warfare, right? Demanding allegiance over obvious truth, executing those who spoke honestly.
Right, loyalty above all else.
Exactly. The sources parallel this to modern demands for public declarations of fealty, the purging of officials who don't unquestioningly follow a leader's will, or even efforts to codify loyalty over established legal precedent or institutional norms. Phrases like, I need loyalty, I expect loyalty.
Okay, what else?
Then there's the erasure of history and intellectual suppression. Qin banned the 100 schools, burned books, executed scholars, all to cement the state-approved ideology and erase independent thought.
Controlling the narrative.
Precisely. The sources compare this to contemporary efforts aimed at controlling narratives, things like attempts to ban certain historical frameworks like critical race theory, rewrite school curricula, attack libraries, push specific book bans, especially targeting certain groups or ideas, or generally reframing history through highly nationalist lenses.
Got it. What's next?
We also see rule by legalism. Qin embraced legalism, strict laws, harsh punishments, centralized power. His chancellors like Li Si and Zhao Gao weaponized law to crush dissent.
Using the system against opponents.
Yeah. The sources draw parallels here to the weaponization of legal systems against perceived political enemies, claims of absolute immunity or authority beyond the law, and proposals aimed at dismantling civil service protections to centralize executive power.
Okay, another pattern.
Tyranny masked by divine mandate. Qin took those divine titles, Huang and Dai, fusing myth and rule. He claimed a heavenly mandate. His tomb literally mimicked the cosmos.
Projecting divine authority.
Right. The sources relate this to modern instances where political figures are framed, or frame themselves, as God's chosen or almost messianic figures, blending politics and prophecy to justify their actions and authority.
Interesting. Keep going.
And, of course, the obsession with legacy, power, and immortality.
Yeah.
Qin built that colossal tomb, the Terracotta Army. He consumed mercury trying to live forever. His desire to be remembered seemed to eclipse any concern for the living who built his monuments. The sources compare this to modern figures who put their names on buildings, accumulate vast personal wealth, surround themselves with ostentatious, gold-plated aesthetics, and seem driven by a quest for eternal legacy through branding and autocratic power, often built on the backs of others or at public expense.
That makes sense. Is there one more major one?
Yes, finally, there's cover-ups, propaganda, and puppet governance. After Qin's death, his advisors faked his presence, killed the rightful heir, manipulated the boy emperor. They replaced truth with a carefully constructed narrative to maintain power.
The rotten fish carts and the forged letter?
Exactly. The sources link this to modern instances of spreading deliberate falsehoods about significant events, like election results, surrounding oneself only with loyalists who echo a specific, often distorted version of reality, and effectively using propaganda as governance. Like the whole stop the steal narrative being presented as fact.
Okay. Those are some powerful parallels. Did the sources mention any other sort of broader themes?
Yeah, briefly. They touched on things like the archetype of the eternal emperor, this idea of trying to overwrite history with your own personal mythology, endless branding. Also, the narcissism of tomb building, that obsession with a monumental self built on the suffering of others, the dangers of unchecked power, Qin dying from his own immortality quest, modern figures surrounding themselves with sycophants who won't tell them the truth, and the enduring role of the advisor, figures like Zhao Gao manipulating from behind the throne, loyal only to an ideology of control.
It really makes you reflect on these patterns, doesn't it? How history, though it doesn't exactly repeat, often seems to rhyme.
It really does. And the irony with Qin Shi Huang is just profound. He believed he had conquered death, that his tomb would house him for eternity, that his dynasty would last 10,000 years.
In a last of 50. The truth he tried so hard to bury rose again. And like that mercury in his blood, maybe it poisoned everything he built in the end. Today, you see echoes. New figures rise who sometimes seem to silence critics, reward sycophants, rewrite history for their own ends. But maybe the lesson of Qin is clear. Ruthlessness can conquer, but maybe only for a moment. And in the end, truth, even if buried for a while, will eventually speak. So here's something to think about. How can we as individuals navigating this really complex world get better at discerning truth from manipulation? And what's our role in upholding truth when we're faced with powerful narratives that seem determined to rewrite reality?